tasks. I have, as a volunteer job now, I'm president of a nonprofit that we've started to build what is called Fisher Houses. And those are homes built on the campus of military and VA hospitals where the family members of the veteran or the service member can stay while they're in the hospital. They stay for no charge. It's a large organization that's headquartered in New York and also Washington. But that's what I do now to kind of further that goal. And I'm glad that we have people like John, even though we would not probably have many other things we would have agreed on, but yet he was pretty vehement about his support for veterans and how they were treated.
Yeah, I was appointed chairman of the Subcommittee on Disabilities and Memorial Affairs, and through that subcommittee I managed to pass a bill. It's actually the only bill that I could say I was the prime author of. The Veterans Claims Modernization Act of 2008 was to try to shorten the time period between when a veteran submits a claim for disability, whether it's a missing leg or arm or PTSD or blindness or whatever kind of, it might be a partial disability, it might be total disability, 100% can't work, need to be taken care of kind of thing. But from the day that that veteran presents their case and their paperwork, and a doctor has examined them and said, yes, they have this injury and it came from their time in service, they shouldn't have to wait 6 months for the adjudication for that to be granted or denied one way or the other, so they can appeal it. They should have a decision. And when I was there was an average 180-day waiting time, and members on both sides of the aisle and every citizen I've spoken to thinks this is an outrage. And I know General Shinseki, who was just resigned or was fired or whatever as head of the VA. He's a good man. He's a West Point grad. He's a 2-time Purple Heart recipient. He was in the VA hospital in Hawaii recovering from losing his foot in one of his injuries. He has a prosthetic foot. He's seen the VA from both sides, and I know he tried his best, but it's such an unwieldy, huge bureaucracy that it's, even for a man of his capabilities, and he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs at one time, he's a very capable guy, but I think maybe a little bit too soft-spoken. I've met with him, one-on-one a few times, or just with his staff and my staff there, and it may be bringing somebody in from business, from outside, who doesn't have an emotional attachment to the different services
or a preconceived idea of what they experience. One comment I'll make about the VA. I've been treated by them for my health care for part of it, and what I find so fascinating is, as a veteran, I like going there. And the reason I like going there is everybody there knows that they're treating a veteran. It's not like you walk into the Kaiser Hospital or you walk in over to Blue Cross doctor's office. They don't know. And so you walk in and they already know that you're a veteran. So they have this huge amount of knowledge of you. And then everybody you run into in the hall, well, that's another veteran. You're sitting in the waiting room. Well, you're chewing the fat with some guy about, he looks about your age, so you talk about, where were you in Vietnam? Oh, you were, okay. But were you with? And then you get to the docs and the nurses, and they'll look at you, and they can literally just ask 1 or 2 questions. Like, when did you serve, and what unit were you in? And that's all they have to ask. And they know whether, I need to screen this guy for Agent Orange, he needs to be PTSD checked, he needs to... And if you go to a civilian doctor, 1, he doesn't know to ask the questions. 2, even if he did, you told him, he wouldn't know what to do with it. And so those are services that I've found to be just invaluable to the veteran community.
Most veterans, once they get to the care, to the service
getting into
part,
that system
is fine. It's getting into the system, and the problem is that the paperwork, up until recently, it was all records kept on paper, and they're now in the process of digitizing and computerizing all records. Everybody, I would say, from 1991 up to the present has at least some part, and now virtually all of their medical records are on computer. Just as in the civilian sector, you go to the doctor's office, and all your meds come up, and all of your previous appointments come up, and so on, and your allergies or what have you.
That's what I thought was interesting. I went to Kaiser and the VA, and they were both the same. They both pulled up the screen. Oh yeah, this, and this.
Yeah, but if you were, the Vietnam and World War II eras and Korea eras, your record was a stack of papers this long. It was boxes being carried from one building to another. And that it's very hard to work with and slow to have somebody enter that information. I mean, the veterans that are dying faster than their information can be computerized.
I'd like to assume that's the World War II veterans and the Korean War. We're dying. I'm surprised, you don't think about that. We're old guys now. And for the longest time, for us, the old guys were the Korean War veterans and the World War II guys.
Yeah.
There aren't very many of them left when you go to the hospital these days. It's mostly your own vintage, in our case.
Talk about bipartisanship. This is one area where both sides of the aisle agree. And I found my ranking member, Doug Lamborn from Colorado, who was probably in disagreement about a lot of issues with me, but we agreed about what needed to be done for the vets. He and I never had a crossword in 4 years of serving on the same committee and working together to pass bills out to the full committee and to the floor. And so I think that I'm encouraged that after the election, hopefully, after all the negative ads are off the air, that people will start looking for that common ground again.
Right. Now, I know you guys have to run off to class.
Well, that's okay, this is easy.
This is great, I can stay here all day.
We've got plenty of
Just real quickly for you, I was reading up on your bio. Your kids come from all 3 different walks of life, and you have one kid, as you said, pilot.
Okay, I've got a daughter that's a fighter pilot.
Now, did they have an idea what they wanted to do, or?
I don't know. In the case of my daughter, when she was in middle school, she wanted to fly a spaceship, and as far as she was concerned, my God, I'm going to go fly a spaceship, and she even went to space camp. And when you're going through space camp, the end of space camp is you do a space mission, a simulated space mission. Well, she said, I'll be the pilot. Every lady should be mission specialist. I'm the pilot, and she was. And she went on, and about the only thing I can remember is influencing that. As I said, well, if you want to go into the space program, among the most successful space people have been military trained pilots. And so I said, you might look at going to the Air Force or the Navy, principally those two, because they have the most aircraft pilots. And she did. She ended up, she got accepted at the Air Force Academy and also the Naval Academy, and went to the Naval Academy and came out of there with a degree in aerospace engineering. And I couldn't even, beyond the guy telling me his name when I entered the classroom, I was just, and went on and had a fabulous career. She's a true warrior. She's bombed places and flown the missions and been a test pilot now and doing these other things. And now she's married, got 2 kids, and still in the Navy, and she's running an F-18 program out in San Diego for the Navy. And my middle son, who is this just gigantic guy that looks like he walked off the pages of the Abercrombie & Fitch catalog. He's about 6'5", 6'6", and he found out he wanted to be a school teacher. And he ended up being a middle school math teacher, where he met this cute little spitfire of an Italian who's every bit of about 5'2". And they've got the 3 most delightful little kids you've ever seen now. And he's now running the school that he actually first started teaching in and went to as an 8th grader, as the principal of it. And his wife is the assistant of another one nearby, because they can't work together anymore. But he's now an administrator. And our youngest one is a firefighter. And again, I actually thought out of the whole crew, just based on, he was a pretty rough and tumble kid and liked to do things. I actually thought he might be the Marine out of the group. And he didn't, he became a fireman. But he was one of those young people that was affected, just like young people are when something terrible happens. But he was a freshman, sophomore in college when 9/11 happened. And he was ready to quit college and go be a fireman right then. We're just like young men and women have done that for years. Whenever something terrible happens, they stop and go volunteer for the services. And we convinced him to stay in college. But he got his bachelor's degree in management. He's now working on a master's. But he's a Los Angeles firefighter. And is going to marry a Los Angeles firefighter in a couple of months. Another cute gal who's just as, I look at her and I go, she was the same way, she a couple of years younger.
Well, I just have one daughter, and
he's a brand new grandpa.
Just became a grandfather. My daughter had 6 months ago, had a daughter of her own, and they live out in California, actually, in Oakland. And life goes on. I think the point for for me here is Steve's a family man with, you know, his life is continuing. He's got his work that he does now. I'm the same, you know, I'm back to doing my work. We went in and out of politics, both of us. And
I spent about 10 years. How long were you in?
I was in an elective office for 10 years.
So we both have, mine was local, state.
At different levels.
Yeah, local, state, and federal.
Sure, sure.
And, but 4 years in Congress. And you know, I think I'll never forget when I was on a trip to Israel and the West Bank, driving down the road, you know, our driver was driving us, me and the other congressman that was on the outing with me, and seeing a sign that said Bethlehem 6 on the road. You know? I mean, that's the kind of thing that you just don't get to experience, flying in over Tora Bora to have dinner with the troops in Kandahar. Flying the C-5A transport simulator with the commander of the 105th Airborne as my flight instructor. And you know, they say it's a good thing that the politicians fly the simulator, not the real plane. I was proud of the fact that I never crashed it. We did about 20 touch and go and turnarounds and come back in again. And it was those kinds of experiences that a civilian would never get to have. Plus getting to help people, you know, solving people's problems, whether it's with a passport or with a veteran's disability that had been denied unjustly, or whether it's getting somebody, you know, a visa or Social Security disability.
The point John's making, right, that to me is probably the one fundamental point that if anyone is interested in serving, particularly in elective office, if you do not enter that position thinking that your role is going to be improving the circumstances of whatever the position is. Is it a school board seat, is it a city council seat, county or a state legislature? But if you don't go there with a passion that says, I'm here because I think I've got a talent or an ability to make life better for the people I'm representing, you better just get the hell out of the job, because it'll eat you alive if you don't have that sense of, because otherwise you'll have so many failures. And for every success, him getting his bill passed about veterans was just, that's a huge success. You know,
for any freshman to get
for anybody to get one. And so if you can't realize that you're going to have a whole lot of disappointment, you've got to have a very strong sense in yourself that I'm doing this because I believe I can, in the end, make life a better place for either my family to be raised in, other people's families, for children to be raised in, to be educated, to make a living, to have a job that you feel worthwhile in, and to maybe change the world in some way, if you can do it even in a little bitty way. And I think that's the passion that takes people a few years, sometimes it takes them a whole lifetime, and they have to be 50 or 60 years old before they ever figure out, oh, you know, I can do that, just like John and I did. I mean, I didn't enter office till I was almost 50 years old. And
I was in my 50s.
I was in my mid-40s or so forth. And that's the message that a lot of young people frequently want to ask, how do I get into politics? I want to be a politician. Well, I can't tell you how to get into it. I can just say, you've got to lead a life where you demonstrate to your friends and neighbors that you have an interest in looking out for their interests. And do you have the ability to make it better? And if you do, well, stand by that and take the beatings that come with it. Because I got to tell you, it's not easy. I mean, I lost elections, and I won some elections, and man, the highs and lows are phenomenal. Get something passed.
Highs are better.
Yeah, the highs are much better. Get a bill passed like that, go to the signing ceremony. I had one like that had the governor sign in California, and I was just, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I had this young woman standing there who we done the bill with because of her. But it's very special stuff. And we have had a privilege that so few people will ever have, because we got to serve in these elected offices that other people let us do.
Yeah, there's a pyramid, the way I look at it, in both of our districts, about 650,000 people who we were representing. It's like a pyramid of votes. They voted to put me in my district and Stephen in his district on top of that and be their one vote in the 538 in Washington, and 435 in the House of Representatives. And so that's, you know, there are all these pyramids. Every district around the country goes through the same process where they select one person for those 2 years to represent them with one vote in Washington. And that's a very it's a weighty responsibility when you think about it. So we try to make it our business to know what our constituents want. And at the same time, we learn things in DC, sometimes through classified briefings, that they can't possibly know. And then we have to try to decide whether to go against what they might, the majority of them might want us to do, or do what we know or believe to be in their best interest. And that's when the job is hardest, I think. But it's most of the time it's pretty evident what people want.
Well, this has been excellent.
Okay.
And like I said, I could stay here all day. Unfortunately, I can't.
And obviously we
You
can talk all day.
got, you got two hot-winded guys here.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Okay.